Battlefield 5's Battle Royale Firestorm has been with us for a couple of days now, and not only is it probably the largest and most interesting addition to Battlefield 5 so far, it most likely is also the most controversial, given that Battlefield isn't exactly known for producing Battle Royale or arena-style shooter games. That being said though, coming from it as a Battlefield player, I thought it only fair to give it a fair shot and talk a little bit about the positives and negatives around Firestorm, its launch and its content, but more importantly, whether or not it's got the staying power and is going to be able to keep people interested in it over the long term. So to start things off with, of course, we should talk about how it launched in an unusual, for Battlefield 5 at least, smooth fashion. No major bugs, major problems, server instability, at least in North America and Europe. I've heard some bad things about Oceania and the South America region, as well as South Africa players being put onto European servers. That aside, at least in North America and Europe, the launch, both from a technical and from a server standpoint, has been relatively smooth. And as sad as that is to say, that's news for Battlefield 5, but it is positive news at that. In terms of squad gameplay then, for me personally at least, things are very good as they stand right now. It's engaging, it's exciting, and it's clearly, if you ask me, the team size or the player mode that the game mode was designed for, in terms of loot spawns, in terms of having enough engagement, in terms of keeping things moving and not too campy, as we'll talk a little bit later on when we get into solos. Squads is in a pretty good place in Battlefield 5 Firestorm right now. That's not to say that there isn't some issues. In terms of positive aspects, there's the gadget variety, and many different gadgets and how to use them are not actually initially apparent and how strong they really can be. Smokes, for example, or the artillery strikes, using them correctly, using them at the right time. There's a lot of gadgets that you skip over to begin with, but as the game progresses and as you get more and more versed in what these gadgets really mean in a practical scenario, you start picking up different weapons and different gadgets. The same goes for the weapons as well, and that's actually a very interesting point. Weapons that aren't very good or aren't frequently used in the normal Battlefield 5 multiplayer experience, some at least, are far more viable in the Firestorm Battle Royale experience because sustained accuracy, because of the higher amount of player health, is more important than short bursts of high damage. So for example, a Sturmgewehr 1.5 in my opinion is a lot less attractive than it is in the normal multiplayer, whereas the MP40, especially upgraded with the right sights, or the Bren gun are a lot stronger in Firestorm than they are in the usual multiplayer experience. That's not to say that the Bren gun isn't already a very good gun in usual multiplayer and criminally underused by most players. Also, what I like about Battlefield 5's Firestorm Battle Royale mode are the objectives, the variety of different things to do on the map instead of just basically shooting each other. There's supply stations, there's vehicle lockups, the various types of objectives that squads can go for, and in the squad-based game mode, those are a lot more achievable. Not only in terms of the risk that you engage when trying to get to them, because as squad you've got a little bit more security, a couple of people can keep watch out, but also in terms of the benefits that they reap. Vehicles are a lot better for squad play because you always need at least a driver and a gunner to operate them, which is one of the negatives we'll be talking about when we get into the solo experience of Firestorm. Speaking of those vehicles, actually, they're not overburdening. You don't see too many tanks, too many vehicle wins. At least I haven't actually seen any. They're powerful and can be used, but they're almost on the slightly weaker side of things. People were worried that vehicles in Battlefield 5's Firestorm were going to be absolutely crazy, dominate the battlefield, and ruin the infantry experience. In my personal experience, almost the opposite is the case. A well-equipped team that makes sure they always pick up those Panzerfaust, pick up those anti-tank grenades, is going to have no problem taking out tanks. We even faced off against a Sturmtiger, which we didn't actually have any trouble getting away from. The faster tanks are a little bit more difficult, but more easy to take out. And so far, actually, I can't report any mass casualties of my squad to any tanks so far. Some of the reasons for this are not only the abundance of anti-tank weaponry, but also the loudness of the vehicles. You hear them coming for miles, and you can basically hide away from them, then they won't know you're there, or you can choose to engage them and take them out if you're in an advantageous position and have the right equipment. I like the way it's balanced. I like vehicles being a little bit on the weaker side in a Battle Royale game because I am a meat and potato infantry player. That said, over time, as players get even more effective at taking out vehicles, there may need to be some consideration given to whether or not we want them as slightly more effective tool and make them either a little bit more tankier or more effective in some way or another. I don't want to give any details or advice as to how Criterion Games should be balancing these so far. A little bit more playing experience and time will tell how exactly tanks end up and what needs changing, if anything, at all. What I also like about the Firestorm Battle Royale experience is the map zone changing, giving you different parts of the map per game. Although I think that some of the areas are very often out of bounds, some of my favorite areas of the map, which is a little bit regrettable, but all in all, it's a good system. Speaking on the map though, there could be a little bit more in it. I like that there's a lot of cover provided by the terrain itself. It makes getting around the map a little bit easier. There's not kind of the open field shooting syndrome that you had in Battlefield 1 on pretty much every Conquest map. At the same time, I'd like a few more unique locations, because those that we do have are very interesting and make for unique gameplay experiences, but there's not that many of them. There's the kind of harbor area, there's the factory manufacturing area, there's the lighthouse area, there's a couple more, but all in all, they're quite spread out of the map, and 90% of the time, you spend your time essentially walking through wild or the carbon copy, same kind of small villages with the same kind of buildings in them. Plenty of time for Criterion Games and DICE, however, to iterate on the map, improve things, and make things more interesting. But on the negative side then, because there are points to mention, I have to of course name drop at least looting, because it is a disaster. I think plenty of YouTubers have covered the topic and what possibly could be done to improve the experience, so I'm not going to waste any time going into here. Thankfully the devs are already working on it, however, because especially towards the end of the game where you don't have time to spend 7 hours looting the exact armor plates or the exact ammunition and weapons that you need from your dead friends or foes, things need to improve. There needs to be a better system there than what is currently the case. Also, speaking of those armor plates and looting, they're scarce if you go for a more aggressive push and try to take out targets to acquire better loot. And that's really a shame, because armor plates are vital. I mean, they double your health, and if you're in any kind of fight against any kind of decent enemy, you're going to need at least 2 armor plates, so medium armor equipped, if you want to take out somebody with equal or better gear. Therefore, either there needs to be some system introduced where not all the armor plates break when you take out somebody, or they drop an additional 1 or 2 armor plates beyond what they have, because if they weren't carrying a full spare set of armor plates, well, you're not going to be getting any armor off them, and you're going to be in a significantly weaker position, most likely, than you were before you even took them on. So actually taking on players then becomes more of a detriment to you in solo, or of course in the squads game mode, than it is an actual benefit, which is not the kind of mechanic that you want. You want to encourage people to try and take each other on, to engage in combat. I've already name dropped the solo mode a couple of times in terms of negative aspects or game mechanics not working quite as well in that mode, and there is a number of them. The first one is the incessant camping that already plagues the normal Battlefield 5 multiplayer experience, but because it's less possible to do in squads, the solo is even more camped up. Essentially, the game mode consists of, if you go into any area where anybody else drops down, you're going to grab a gun, you're going to sit into the corner of the next building, and you're going to wait. That's what everybody is going to do until somebody gets impatient enough to start walking around, and everybody else is then going to peek out of their windows and shoot you in the back. It's not a fun experience. It's not enjoyable at all if you're not the kind of player who likes sitting in windows for 10 minutes, especially the first 10 minutes of the game, and it happens towards the end of the game as well, and makes for some very unsatisfied and some would even say undeserved deaths. That's at least my personal opinion. What also doesn't work as well in the solo game mode are tanks. Because you need a gunner and a driver, you essentially have to drive the tank somewhere, park it, switch the seat into the gunner seat, and then take somebody out. That takes quite a bit of time, further limiting the effectiveness of the vehicle, because not only can your enemy hear them already from 1.5 miles coming, but they now have an extra few seconds to get behind some decent cover while you're switching seats when they already know exactly where you are. So tanks are even weaker in solos and rarely seen. There needs to be something done there. Either the driver needs to have access to the guns at the same time, or they need to be removed from the solo experience entirely. Something needs to be changed, because tanks are absolutely worthless as it stands right now in the solo experience. Of course, I also have to mention duos not existing. For somebody who would prefer to play Firestorm in duos, personally, this is a big deal. Why is there no duos mode? I don't think there's any massive technical difficulties that could justify duos not being in to begin with. And if they are actually time limited, as supposedly they are when they come in April, that's going to be a disaster. I find duos far more important than the solo experience, but that's just me personally. Another thing that the community, of course, has mentioned extensively is the lack of, well, rewarding victory. You get this half-assed victory scheme, a little bit of an icon, small bit of music. If you've won a battle royale, you want to celebrate. Be some more rewards, bigger deal made of the end screen, more music, all this kind of aspects that they don't really make you feel special when winning the game. And that's a little bit of a problem, if you ask me, in a battle royale scenario. also surrounding the Battle Royale, I think there's a little bit missing in terms of the system, the prestige, the UI, extra rewards. It's just another multiplayer mode, and there's really nothing else to it. There should be more of a effort put into making the Battle Royale experience a little bit more separate from the multiplayer, with maybe an additional progression tree, additional cosmetics, more than just the one mission set that we have as of now, to make it a little bit more involved, because that's really going to drive the long-term enjoyment for this, and seeing it so closely tied into the usual multiplayer, if you ask me, is ultimately going to kill off the game mode, because it's not going to offer enough new, unless of course Criterion Games has a serious roadmap as to what is going to change and be added to Battle Royale continuously to keep the experience fresh. While I very much do hope that is the case, because I've been enjoying Firestorm very much so far, I don't have the confidence in EA and DICE that that is the plan they're going for, because, well, there's no reason to be confident in them so far, given what they've done with Battlefield 5 since launch and at launch as well. Another couple things that I'd like added is, for example, a kill cam. It'd be great to see where the player was exactly camping when he took me out, especially in solos. It would also be nice if the map, as mentioned, had a couple more unique places. And please, DICE, add the reconnect feature, because not all of us has the most stable internet, and it's happened to me before. We're close towards the end of the match, having survived so far, taking out a couple of people, having some good gear. My internet failed me for about 15 seconds, and that was enough to kick me out the match, and, well, there was no reconnecting and regaining my position. Frustrating experience, to say the least. But that pretty much wraps up the Firestorm experience to me. Let me know down below in the comments what you've thought of Battlefield 5's Battle Royale Firestorm. Have you been enjoying it so far? Do you think it's something that doesn't at all belong into the Battlefield 5 multiplayer experience? Leave that, as well as, of course, your usual video suggestions and comments down below in the comment section, or hit me up with them on Twitter. If you enjoyed the video, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 5 video.